so everyone gets settled. While we're waiting to begin, I just want to thank all of the men and women who work here at this facility and everyone who works for the Department of Correction. A lot of people lined up here who work very hard every day in very tough circumstances, and I want to thank them. I particularly want to thank those who are working here in this new unit, because I think it's an example of the kind of changes and reforms that will make a huge difference here. And it requires, for that change to work, requires officers who are ready to answer the call to be a part of this change and to make a difference, and these individuals are doing that. So I want to thank you all for the work you are doing. We're here to announce an additional set of policies that will change, once again, the reality on Rikers Island and the facilities here. We are acting decisively to reduce violence. The policies that we announced today will have a profound impact on reducing the amount of violence that has been experienced here over many years. We are fundamentally dissatisfied with a culture of violence and will not allow it to continue, and there are many, many things we can and will do to change that reality. And starting today, a series of additional steps that we think will be difference makers. Again, I want to thank everyone who works here, because it is not only tough work, it is necessary work, and it's work that doesn't get the kind of attention that a lot of other forms of public service receive. So it takes a special spirit and a special strength to serve others under adverse circumstances and not always get the praise that should be received. But a lot of people here do it every day and do it well. We have to back them up with tough policies that help us reduce violence in a number of ways. I want to thank the leaders gathered around me. I want to start by thanking Commissioner Pont. I think is doing an outstanding job addressing a very complex situation, a situation that's literally decades old. And he brings the experience transforming jails and prisons around the country. And only someone with this level of experience could possibly take on the challenges here. And all of that is framed by the fact that he started his career exactly like some of the individuals standing with us here today started his career as a correction officer and remembers in all he does his origins in this work. I want to thank the other leaders of this department: James Arenda, First Deputy Commissioner; Martin Murphy, Chief of Department; Hazel Jennings, the Assistant Chief of Security; Yolanda Canty, the Assistant Chief of Division 2; Kenneth Stukes, the Warden of OBCC; and Robert Kelly, the Deputy Warden of Custody Management. I want to thank all of them for the leadership. All of them are playing a crucial role in the reforms that we are undertaking. I just toured this new facility, Enhanced Supervision Housing, ESH. It is special housing for inmates responsible for most of the violence here on Rikers Island. So this is a crucial point to make this place safer for everyone who's here. The people who work here, the officers, the mental health professionals, the inmates, everyone, begins with addressing that small group of inmates who cause most of the violence. 7% of inmates drive the majority of the violence. The power of this unit is that it goes right at that 7% and treats them differently in a way that we believe will be fundamentally more effective at reducing violence. This unit's been open for just 3 weeks, and force has only had to be used twice by our officers to address a situation here. The average is 10 times a week in other facilities. It's an early indication of the kind of change we expect to see here, and the decrease is due to the fact that the training and the approach here emphasizes conflict resolution and de-escalation. So these are highly trained officers who understand how to diffuse difficult situations. Everything we're talking about today is about fundamental reform, is about launching a new era here on this island where violence will decrease steadily. It is about changing the culture of this place, and it's about addressing bluntly years of neglect suffered by everyone who was here. And that neglect has ended because everyone knows the Department of Correction is now a focal point for our administration and for all of us at City Hall. Today, we're announcing 5 key reforms to reduce inmate-on-inmate violence, but also clearly have an impact on reducing all types of violence, including violence against our officers. As part of a larger 14-point plan, the results of a months-long review of all of the operations and processes here. For months, we've been trying to understand what's been working and what hasn't been working and how to fix it. A lot of effort has gone into figuring out what needs to change, and these changes will now happen very aggressively. The first and most important, we have to keep weapons, drugs, and other contraband off this island. The only weapons that should be used on this island should be used by people wearing uniforms, not by inmates who got weapons, who got drugs, who got contraband illegally and inappropriately. We know that the weapons become the basis of violence, inmate on inmate, and in some cases, inmate on officer. We know the drugs become the basis for a violent culture, where people are fighting over the drugs. We have to stop this at its root. We know that the reality is that so many inmates acquire weapons and acquire drugs through visitors. In fact, we know that many criminal gangs use the visitation process to pass weapons and pass drugs to their fellow gang members here in these facilities. They also pass messages. You've seen it in the movies. It happens in real life. They pass messages telling the inmates who to attack and how to engage in the wrong kind of activity. So to address this problem at the root, we need a much stronger, much stricter visitor policy, which will limit physical contact between visitors and inmates and will, in fact, restrict the right of certain individuals to visit in the first place if they do not pass a security screen. We're working with the City Board of Corrections and the State Commission on Correction to implement these necessary changes, and they are long overdue. These rules will actually bring New York City in line with the largest jail systems in the country, including Los Angeles, Chicago, and Philadelphia, all of which limit physical contact, all of which restrict the opportunity to visit based on security concerns. We're also going to focus on securing the entrances to these facilities more effectively. That means contraband sniffing dogs, body scanners, and enhanced TSA-type search procedures. So all of that is going to the fact that if weapons can flow in here and if contraband can flow in here, do not be surprised that there is a culture of violence that threatens everyone in here, starting with those who work every day to protect people here, our officers. So we are going to the root of the problem. If you cut off the weapons and you cut off the drugs, that's how you change the culture profoundly. And nowhere can we do that better than changing the visitation process. Second, we're going to end what's been an approach to the placement and housing of inmates that can only be referred to as one-size-fits-all. Well, one-size-fits-all housing of inmates is dangerous. Again, dangerous to fellow inmates, dangerous to our officers. So from this point on, we are classifying and housing inmates based on their needs and their realities, separating the most violent and the most likely to engage in violence from each other, separating rival gang members, taking the kind of common sense strategic steps that will undercut violence before it begins. It's already begun with the ESH unit, with the young adult unit, with the transgender unit. It's all focused on making sure that inmates are in the setting that will most reduce violence and can address their particular needs. Third, we've talked about this before, but we are tripling the number of security cameras throughout the island for full coverage of the most trafficked areas in all facilities. It's a crucial reform that creates accountability for all, the ability to know exactly what's going on, the ability to follow up in the event of an incident. But nothing creates a greater sense of accountability than everyone knowing that their actions are being watched, and that will be throughout all facilities. Fourth, we are expanding educational opportunities, treatment opportunities, and other services for inmates. People here, when all the hardworking people here succeed, they are obviously at the work of rehabilitation. That is why it's called the Department of Correction. To do that right, additional efforts are needed to reach inmates who can be redeemed and help them to get on a productive path looking toward their release. So we're adding 5 extra hours of programming every day for all, starting with the youngest inmates. And that includes a host of initiatives that are real world and can help inmates to move forward. It may be teaching writing or other skills necessary for the workplace. It may be teaching conflict resolution, the kinds of life skills that will keep people out of trouble here and beyond. It will include workforce training, actual skills training for jobs. It will include fatherhood and family initiatives to help the people here recognize their responsibilities beyond. Positive use of the time of the inmates not only helps in the rehabilitation process, it helps to reduce violence. Those who are occupied in something constructive are much less likely to be involved in violence. One example, one story, is from the Rikers Rovers program. There's a young inmate who previously did not seem like his life was going to go in any good direction, and he was not known for being particularly responsible. But he got selected for the opportunity to train and care for a rescue shelter dog. And this brought something different out in this inmate. Every day, he learned how to wake up at 5 in the morning to walk and feed the dog. He started taking responsibility, he started maturing. The head of this program called up his mother, told his mother how the inmate was progressing, told his mother that her son was actually transforming. In these difficult circumstances, her son was starting to mature. And the mother was honestly shocked to hear that her son had become diligent and responsible in this manner. The truth is, his mother, I don't want to say that she had given up on him, but she was pained by the reality and she hadn't been visiting her son. But when she heard that her son was starting to make progress, she came to see him. This young man was recently released, and his mother came to pick him up the day he was released, which indicates that when we reach individuals here, we are not only just reaching them, but sometimes reaching their whole family, because in this instance, 2 lives changed for the better, and the relationship between mother and son deepened. So that's the kind of thing that this opportunity for additional learning, additional instruction, positive and constructive time can do for our inmates. One more point I want to raise, our 5th point. Special teams have been created, and I admire these teams because they are individuals who are ready to take on a tough situation, have gotten trained to be the very best at doing something very hard, which is de-escalating conflict and intervening quickly to ensure that violence does not occur. These are peacemakers, and they are special because when they succeed, the impact on people's lives is profound. This is the new emergency support units, and they'll be at every facility so they can quickly deploy, specially trained in conflict resolution, nonviolent tactics, and how to work with mentally ill inmates. Those 5 items build upon a host of other reforms and investments we've made over the last year, and there is more to come. And I also want to say that each and every day, Commissioner Pont and my team at City Hall and his team are working on every additional reform and action we need, and some of those actions are taken as soon as a problem is identified. Yesterday, as many of you know, Department of Correction announced that it was upgrading security doors in a mental illness observation unit where, very sadly, a female officer was assaulted last week. It became clear that that unit did not have the right facilities and the right technology. Commissioner Pont, to his credit, ordered inmates out of that unit until it could be brought to a standard worthy of the changes we're making and a standard that would protect our officers appropriately. On top of that, of course, a host of other reforms and investments, and one that has gained attention all around the country as a truly breakthrough action by this department, not just ending punitive segregation for 16 and 17-year-olds, but building a pathway to ending punitive segregation for 18 to 21-year-olds by the end of the year, setting a new national standard. To say that much work remains to be done would profoundly be an understatement, because you don't have years and years of things going in the wrong direction and then change it overnight. But I can say this: our focus is profound. The investments we are making are strong and purposeful. They will continue. They will deepen. The vision is there. The leadership is there. And we will not stop until this place is much, much safer. And I want to pledge to our officers who do such difficult work, you will have the training, you will have the support, you will have the resources to ensure the safety of all. And I pledge to all who come through these doors as inmates that we will create an atmosphere of greater safety and security and the kind of services that actually allow us to turn lives around. For a long time, our Department of Correction and Rikers Island was looked to as a national model, and then a decline occurred. Our intention is to make it a national model of what is right again, a national model of how a facility can be safe and how real rehabilitation can occur. It will take time, but we are resolute that we will not rest until we reach that level. Just a few words in Spanish. Estamos transformando la cultura de violencia de Rikers Island en una cultura de seguridad. Normas más estrictas para visitantes, más cámaras y otras reformas nos ayudarán a mejorar la seguridad de todos. With that, I want to bring forward Commissioner Pont. I want to commend him for his incessant and urgent sense of reform. Obviously, in the course of this year or so of working together, I've had the opportunity to really get to understand Commissioner Pont's thinking, and he brings an urgency and a depth of thinking and a real understanding of how to change a culture, and he understands, again, partly because he did the work from early on in his career, but partly because he's faced these challenges in other places and found the key to reform and driven that reform through to completion. And that's why he is here as our leader today. Commissioner Pont.
Thank you, man. Thank you. All right. Morning, everyone. I just want to add a few comments to the mayor's remarks. I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to run a system this large. So while our backbone is our correction officers, we have up here on the top tier to my left our maintenance staff. So all the work, the quality of the work, the cleanliness of this unit were all done as a result of our in-house staff, and they really did a great job. Our own staff walking in these units were surprised at the work that was done. Are we in the same building? So great job, guys, and I really appreciate your work, so well done. There's a couple other recognitions. There's Deputy Warden Kelly, who has led the effort to create these units in enhanced supervision, was promoted. At the same time, we tasked him with creating a concept that did not exist in the city of New York ever, and even nationally, it was kind of a modified concept in what you would see in other correctional systems. So he was really tasked to create this model, write the policy, figure out how things work, and all the kind of details of how the unit operates over a very short period of time. And again, we have one unit established. This unit will open in the next few weeks. just did a great job, and I just want to thank him for his work. I think the one point I want to make, we spent a lot of time looking at the data that was driving our decision. So it's very easy to see the problems. It's like, well, you had a bad event, we had this happen. Fixing those things is important. They were not the driving causes of these situations. So culture and the things that are in our 14-point plan are just the deep dive, long-term fix. It's not going to be overnight, the long-term fix to this situation. Been a lot of short-term things that people have tried. This is the long-term fix. We do these things, it will build on all the other things that are needed in this organization. For our staff, there's been, as everybody knows, there's been some media attention about some situations that we've had here. I want to make sure that everybody understands, everybody that walks in the door in any of our facility, it is safety first. Our staff safety is our number one priority. None of these reforms that the mayor talked about will work if our staff are not safe. Number one priority, it's built into every one of these reforms, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to keep our staff safe so we can then keep our inmates safe and deliver on the programming that we all know will benefit this group. So, again, took a lot of time to get where we are today to really talk about this plan, but we spent a lot of time looking at the data of why things were happening, and I think we've done a very good job on building the plan to give us a long-term fix to things that have been broken here for quite some time. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to do questions on topic, followed by questions off topic. You may begin.
Mr. Mayor, so this might actually be a question more likely for the commissioner. On the visits, one, will these new rules have to be approved by the Board of Correction? And two, when you're talking about restricting contact visits, are you talking about inmates that are housed solely in enhanced supervised housing, the most violent inmates, or is this a system-wide change that would affect someone that's in here perhaps?
I'll start and pass to the Commissioner. Yes, the new rules would have to be approved by the Board of Corrections, and I am going to work closely with the board members and let them know how strongly I believe we need these reforms for the safety of all. Commissioner, you can speak to the implementation.
All right. So part of the mayor's remarks, he talked about one size does not fit all. So inmates on the higher level of custody, those that are driving most of the violence, would be more restricted. So it's not a non-contact booth visit. It's just redefining what contact is. So it would be limited contact, which is not allowed in the current rule, but it wouldn't be non-contact. So it would also be screening who comes in to visit. We all know family support, family contact is extremely important for rehabilitation. So we don't want to do anything that hinders that in any way.
By limited contact, are you talking about limiting hours? Are you talking about
limiting the physical contact. So it would be, in general, an embrace. Again, we haven't gotten this through the rules. It would be, in general, an embrace when you come in. You're sitting at a table like we do now, other than to be probably a 6 or 8 inch glass divide. So if you're going to pass something, it would be very obvious that that's what you're doing.
Certain inmates will not be allowed to hug family members.
No, didn't say that. So it would be a brief embrace when they come in. And they'll be sitting at a table. They'll be able to hold their children, but sitting at a table. Again, this is the higher custody. This is the people that are driving the violence. These are the people that are bringing in the drugs and the weapons. Those are the ones we want to focus our attention on and to give additional privileges to those that aren't. I think, as the mayor said, a very small number of inmates are driving the problems in this organization.
Now, let me amplify this for a second. Again, let me be clear. Right now, a lot of weapons and a lot of contraband come in here, and it fuels violence. And I think, to the credit of many of you, you've been writing about the problem of violence here, and we have to solve the problem. You solve the problem by getting the root of it. If we can reduce the flow of weapons and contraband and drugs, we will undercut violence. We're going to do that in a way that, of course, respects a family's right to visit their loved one. But we're going to be smart about the fact that there still need to be some limitations on the ability of any individual to pass items to an inmate that are inappropriate. There's no circumstance in which anyone, I don't care if it's their mother, their sister, their brother, no one should be passed a weapon, period. No one should be passed drugs, period. And so we're going to set a dynamic where we can hold strict standards and keep people accountable. That does not stop family members from having an appropriate visit with their loved one. We're also going to add restrictions as to who can visit, because if some individuals raise security concerns through their visit and obviously are likely visiting to either pass weapons or drugs or other contraband or orders to incite further violence, those individuals will not be allowed to make the visit. So we're going to offer a really clear message to everyone in this city, including those who seek reform here, that if you're serious and consistent about ending violence against our inmates and our officers, then you're going to understand why we need common sense measures to stop weapons and drugs from getting into this facility.
Just a little, just still a bit unclear. Are you or are you not allowed to hug your family member, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Right. No. So in the most restrict visiting, it's a booth visit. So those have to have done something to end up there. That's a completely non-contact. The rules we're trying to change would be a brief embrace. So you can hug the family member coming in. Once you sit at the table, it'll be a fairly low glass partition. So if you're going to pass something, it'll be very obvious. And then embrace when they leave.
And right now there's no petition. You're just
No, it's just sitting at a table very close. Yep.
Yes. And could you describe the level of contact currently common?
Right. So there's no restriction right now. So you could be hugging very close, sitting in close proximity to the visitor. I think the tables in some places are very low. So that the ability for people who have that intent to smuggle is pretty easily done.
And the restrictions on people that would be visiting, would those be anyone, let's say, with a record, who wouldn't be allowed to visit
Right.
now?
So again, family member support is very important. If you have a felony conviction but no family ties to an individual, we'd be concerned. If you're a part of a gang on the outside, but a family member, we'd have some concern. So it really is individually driven, but that family tie is a number one reason that people get out and do well. We want to do everything we can to support that, but at the same time, keep things safe.
I'm going to expand on it one more time, then we will be taking other questions. Don't worry. We're captive in here. We'll take plenty of questions. Right now, it is way too easy to pass weapons and drugs and contraband. As you heard from the Commissioner, it's prolonged and close contact. It's a very easy construct for people passing along things they shouldn't. We're going to make it hard to pass along anything that shouldn't be passed along. Right now, a gang member who is not a family member can visit his fellow gang member. We're going to have much tougher rules to avoid anyone coming to visit for the purpose of encouraging or inciting or enabling violence. It's just clear as day why we need stricter rules. Yes.
A number of recent investigations by the Department of Investigations have noted that both inmates and employees, sometimes clinicians and nurses, there have been several arrests, and occasionally correction officers have also been responsible for bringing in the contraband. And you had touched on this, Commissioner, a few months ago. I wonder if you could give us an update on efforts to improve screening both on the visitor side and on the employee side, particularly with regards the use of canines.
So we really already talked about visitor as meaning an inmate's visitor, so I only want to add to that. But staff screening is critically important. You know, we've for many years accepted much less than we should have. We've increased or set a new bar for people coming to work. The screening is intensive. We're doing precinct checks, so we're checking with local precincts. We do much more in-depth interviews. And some of the things that we were doing here in the past, if you failed the NYPD assessment, we hired you here. So those are the kind of setting the same bar standards that's already in the police department. We've really adopted that same protocol for us. And I think that will serve us well. Long-term solution, we hire 600 officers a year. We've got 8,000 uniformed staff. It's going to a long time to get that quality where we want it, but that's a very important piece of how we're moving forward. The investigative unit, we've added canines to the unit. So some of our officers that were canine officers on our special details now work for ID. They will be getting canines, and part of their screening will be also to do staff screening, part of their investigation. So we've gave them more tools to have more oversight on staff also.
Will there be canines now at visitor entrances and at employee entrances? And when do you? It said in the flyer that you expect this to come online in about June 2016.
Right. Well, the ID, our investigative unit, will have canines in, I think, less than 3 months. So they're pretty far along on getting that done. And they'll be available, not every day, not every entrance, but they'll be there from time to time. We do already use our canines at visit entrances quite frequently, probably not every entrance every day, but they are currently used. We're expanding that group to increase the numbers.
So let me just jump in. We've indicated a number of measures to address the small minority of officers who do the wrong thing, and that is, true in every area of employment. The vast majority do the right thing and are here for the right reason. There is a small number that do the wrong thing, and we're going to be very vigorous about getting at that. And you've heard about previously the additional screening procedures that have been put in place and the way that we're approaching building a stronger workforce for the future. But that challenge, although very real, in my view, pales in comparison to the challenge posed by the visitation dynamic, which is so deeply lacking in the kind of restrictions and common sense limitations that we need. And so we're going at every piece of this problem. And then in addition to all the things we're trying to do to screen at the front end, whether it is employees or inmates, we will have full security camera coverage of all facilities, all key areas of all facilities, to create accountability. So all of these pieces are aimed at reducing violence. The core to everything else working here is to reduce violence. The key element we need is to reduce violence. Yes.
As we know, the U.S. Attorney's Office was a major presence throughout the reform. Have you been in touch with the office with these new measures, and if so, what have they said?
So obviously, as we did the kind of deep dive in looking at the organization, the U.S. Attorney had already filed a report. So all these 14 initiatives are all taking those things into consideration. Cameras are one. So obviously, we want camera coverage. The U.S. Attorney wants camera coverage. So I believe, for the most part, we addressed all the concerns, and that's still an active negotiation. But we didn't just say, well, we'll do that down the road. We took that into consideration as we're planning our reforms. So.
Two questions. First, can you elaborate a bit on the visitation registry? Does someone have to pre-register? How do you identify who's a family member? And second, how are inmates restricted today so we could be here?
So yeah, we're looking at some type of pre-registration. We're a jail, so we get in 7 days, half our population turns over. So that's about 4,000 or 5,000 inmates after 7 days. That's a lot of people to pre-register. So in a jail, we're looking at a system to screen out felons or gang members, and we don't know exactly what that will look like. But pre-registration in jails is generally pretty difficult. So that's something that as we design this and working with the Board of Corrections, to have a system that gets better than what we got today to make sure that people who are felons aren't coming in to bring contraband or weapons to the facility.
And the second question about how inmates are restricted today?
Basically, you need to sign up and come in and visit. There's no.
You mean overall restrictions here?
In this building, so
Just because we're here.
because we're here, were there any?
What was done today to accommodate the fact that we're here?
Other than just slowing movement down, so inmate programs are still going on, and so slowed movement down as we came in, but there's facilities open and operating. Warden's right here. Yeah.
Leadership is present.
Right.
Yes.
You say often decades worth of problems, or these problems are decades in the making. Doesn't logic tell us that it'll be decades until we start seeing results? And what does long time, or it won't be easy, or won't be quickly, what does that mean? When is it reasonable to start saying X, Y, and Z is happening, and that means we're turning it around?
Look, I think to the first question, no. I do not think because a problem is decades old, it takes decades to resolve. I think we can look at the history of the NYPD for some really important instruction. Several decades ago, the NYPD was facing a host of problems. We all remember, Frank Serpico's testimony and other moments in the history of the city that were very troubling The NYPD proceeded to greatly professionalize its operation, to improve its leadership, to improve its integrity. It's now a model nationally and internationally. So it is important to remember that agencies, even those that have been neglected or had historic problems, can turn around and turn around quickly with the right leadership and with the right investments and with the right strategy. I think you'll see steady progress. I think when we put these next pieces in place, particularly when we have fully implemented the efforts to add some real limitations to the flow of weapons and drugs through the visitation process, I think you're going to see a real impact on the level of violence from that in the near term. I think obviously what is going to be happening in this unit, we believe, will reduce violence in the near term by taking the most violent elements out of the rest of the population and addressing them separately. So I think you're going to see progress soon. I think sustained change obviously will take several years, but I think you're going to see progress soon.
Yeah, Mayor, I was wondering what your thoughts were on the lockdown of all of the jails on Rikers Island last week for about 36 hours. What you thought about that process, and also the news that there were some violent incidents right after that happened, even after many weapons had been found. You know, is it frustrating for some of these things to keep happening and for the commissioner to?
It's frustrating that these issues were not dealt with more fundamentally long ago. But now that we're putting a very vigorous plan into place, you know, we're on the offensive. We know, again, it will take time to be fully implemented and be fully felt, but we're on the offensive. I think the lockdown was a smart move in light of some of the trends the commissioner and his team saw occurring, and they wanted to very energetically disrupt those trends because they're trying to undo what has been a culture of violence for too long. So I think it was an appropriate action. It doesn't surprise me that there may have been some immediate after effects, but that's the kind of vigorous, decisive action that will be taken when needed.
There was yesterday there alone, there was 3 stabbings and slashings. I think that brings it up to about 30 altogether for this year. Jail bosses that I talk with, they say that they feel that a part of that is due to the fact that inmates feel they can, that there's restrictions on limiting solitary, and they feel they can do this and not have any ramifications. How do you balance these sort of reforms with the violence?
I'll pass the commissioner, but let me just speak he's an expert, I'm a layman. We have a massive violence problem when punitive segregation was in its previous incarnation. So I think right away it's very hard to argue that those reforms correlate negatively. There's been a violence problem here for a long, long time. But the steps we're talking about today are foundational to turning that around. The actions we took on punitive segregation were the right thing to do from a human perspective, but they were not taken in isolation, and that's why you are sitting where you are sitting right now. A method that proved to be very problematic and have many unintended consequences has been replaced by what I think is a much smarter strategy to focus on those with a propensity to violence and do it in a way that we think will be more effective for the long haul. So I think we have to look that in the eye. A new approach, already showing some good signs of progress. Let's give this approach time to play out, and I think you're going to see it as much more effective than the previous.
So I don't yet. We are frustrated. We are transitioning from one mode of operation to a new mode, with this enhanced supervision unit. That transition is part of that, but inmates that are violent today can stay in this type of supervision for long periods of time, not 30 days, not 90 days, long periods of time. We think that's a better option. It's less restrictive on the inmate, but safer for us. Long-term punitive seg is not the answer to change inmate behavior. These types of units are. So we're in a transition mode, and as we get these other units open, again, we got, I think, 17 inmates in enhanced supervision today. We got beds for 250. As we get these other units opening and operating, I think we'll definitely impact those kinds of issues.
Can I just do a quick follow-up? As far as opening and operating, one of the things people have pointed out to me that there's only 20 inmates now, or roughly, in this unit now, and they were kind of questioning why so few.
Right. anything new. It was a concept that we drew up on the wall. Deputy Warden came in, and how do you take a concept and make it happen? All of our officers were trained up for the assignment. How does the unit operate? How do you move inmates? How do you do shift from tier to tier? How do you get services in? All those things had to be walked through, tested, changed to the point where when the deputy warden says, we're good, we're comfortable, we will then add those inmates in the unit. I think we're at that point now.
Have you set any benchmarks for the kind of reductions in violence you want to see? Have you set like a date when you want such and such percentage reduction to happen?
Right now, we are trying to put the building blocks in place. Over time, we're going to have further announcements of additional reforms, and a day is going to come when we talk about benchmarks. But I think we're still in the foundational stage here, of putting all the elements in place for the reforms we need.
Mr. Mayor, I just wonder if anybody knows what the talk is among the correction officers in regard to these modifications. Are they supportive of them, and why should the public care about all of these modifications as well?
Well, you know, our inmates are citizens of the city of New York, so I think we all ought to care about them. It's a new model. It's less restrictive, so inmates won't be doing thousands of days of punitive seg time. And we have programming in place for those who want to. We think at the end of it, when they get through here, they'll be better off. So it's a better way to treat people. It's a better way to reduce the violence. And officers should care, because these officers every day are dealing with that. So I don't think they're going to argue with, hey, if it's safer and better for me being an officer, then it's good for the inmate. If it's not, then obviously they wouldn't. But it's a new concept, so we need to prove to our staff that this is good and will work and help them.
I'm just wondering, to follow, are you getting any direct feedback? Is there any resistance to this, or is there
I don't think that, no, I mean, it's a new concept. I don't think we've had resistance, but we've had people say, I don't know if that's going to work, and, you know, what about this? How is this going to work? So the proof's in the pudding. You know, we think the model will work. The deputy warden feels the model will work. Chief of the agency feels it will work. And so in time, we'll be able to prove to our staff that this is good, it's safe for them, and safe for the inmates that we house here.
Let me jump in, because I often make parallels between this agency and NYPD, and I'm going to make another one now. I've spent a lot of time with Commissioner Bratton, and he has told me a lot about the experiences he had in the early 1990s trying to change the culture first of the transit police and then of the NYPD in general. And we speak often of the legendary Jack Maple, who gave us ComStat. You could fill many an evening with the stories of people who said Jack Maple was crazy, and this would never work, and why is there a computer in this room, and we don't want to talk about that, and we just want to go out and fight crime, and all understandable, but you know, innovators often find resistance initially, and then as their innovations work, find acceptance, and then eventually are held up as great examples, and everyone talks about what an honor it was to be a part of it. I've seen that trajectory many a time. I think we're going to see it here as well. I was talking to Deputy Warden earlier, who, as a leader here in this unit, has been recruiting the members of the team, and he relayed to me, you know, the fact that some people, yes, the commissioner is exactly right, some people doubted whether it would work. And what a leader does is say, here's why I personally, how many years, Deputy Warden? 12 on the job, 12 years on the job. I'm committed to this work. I'm committed to everyone's safety, and I believe this is going to work, and I want you to come with me on this mission. And then people start to say, okay, let's give this a try, and more do it, and then they see results, and more join, and more get enthusiastic. That's how the process of institutional change works. It starts with leaders who take people someplace they haven't been before.
If I could just react.
Yes?
Why should the general public care about this? I mean, the general public doesn't really think of themselves probably as being involved with Rikers.
I think a couple of different reasons. I agree with the commissioner's most fundamental one, because the people in here are fellow New Yorkers. And just the fact that they went astray is not the end of the story. It should not be the end of the story. We don't want it to be the end of the story. We want to turn people around. The folks who work here came into this work because they believed that they could be agents of redemption. And we have an obligation to try and turn around these individuals who will be back in our neighborhoods amongst us, and we want them to be on a new and better path. So right there is a reason that's in everyone's interest. Second, for so many family members, which adds up to a lot of people in New York City, they want to see their loved ones helped to a better path. They certainly want to know their loved ones are safe. And then beyond it, because the people of the city want to know, as taxpayers and citizens, that everything we invest in is being done right. And it's quite clear that what's happened for years here on Rikers Island has not been appropriate. And we owe it to the people of this city to show them we can get this right. Gloria.
Sorry, you were talking about the screening process you want to put in place to screen visitors who are coming in, and the commissioner, I believe you mentioned it's a difficult thing to do. What are you going to do in between, other than limiting physical contact? Is there anything else you can do in between to make sure that people who shouldn't perhaps be having visits with inmates will continue to have?
Well, let me turn to the commission, but let me just preface. So we're going to present this proposal to the Board of Corrections. There's obviously going to be discussion with a number of stakeholders over the coming weeks, but we intend to move quickly. And there's going to be a chance to fine-tune the proposal as the commissioner indicated. I think the idea here, again, is we are going to disrupt a problem culture, and that is not just a matter of the weapons or the drugs or the contraband that you interrupt at the point of contact. It's all the weapons and the drugs and the contraband that never come out here in the first place because people assume it will be intercepted. Today, there are too many individuals who mean to do the wrong thing, who believe that they will get through with those weapons and drugs and contraband, and with those messages that will cause acts of violence to occur by their fellow gang members in here, et cetera. We're going to create a dynamic where it's quite clear there are consequences and that those actions are going to be intercepted, which means, again, a lot of people will not even try in the first place. It's a classic preventative step. As for other measures that can be taken to go at the problem of weapons, why don't you handle that?
So the concept is if you have a family member who supports you while you're in prison or jail, we want to keep that bond and tie as well as we can. If you are in the criminal enterprise, meaning you have arrests on your record, you have drug convictions, if you have felony convictions, those are the individuals we want to look at. Now, sometimes a family member may have a felony conviction, but there's a good nexus as to why they would want to come and visit. Somebody who has a serious felony conviction but not a family member, we would probably question. So we haven't built a screening tool, but typically we'd want to look at criminal activity. That's the easiest one. We'd probably look at intel, meaning talking with the PD, what's happening in the neighborhood, gang members. So PD does a good job on that intel, but it would be really, the screening would be to screen in the people that are good, supportive role models for the inmates in their custody.
I guess the specific of what I'm asking is, if someone is in here, a person comes in to visit them, when that person walks into the door, are you looking to put something in place, whether it's something you can access through a computer or whatever other system, where you can say plug someone's name in and see if they have a criminal record or something? Is it going to be something like that?
That would be our intent, to have some criminal background screening tool at the front door. Again, all of this needs to get through the Board of Corrections, so we're not really that far out to say how we're going to do certain things yet.
Okay, last call on topic. First back there.
Talk about life in this unit. Is it risky at all for those dangerous inmates?
What is life like
together? How does it differ from the
Okay, so the inmates in punitive seg, the inmates all out of cell time. When they come out of the cell, they're in restraints. When they go to the shower, they're taken to the shower in restraints taken off, they're locked in the shower room. When they go to rec, they rec by themselves. They go to rec in restraints taken off, go to rec, and same thing when they come back. All movement is basically in restraints. In this unit, half the unit is out, so 25 inmates are out together, no restraints, and again, enhanced supervision. So we'll have officers on the top tiers, we'll have officers on the flats here, and we have good camera coverage, so good oversight. We deliver programs here, so you're not going to leave the unit to go to programs. They'll be done right here in the unit. And your minor medical screening will happen here. If you're going to see a doctor or an MD, you'd go to the clinic. So outside the unit, from here, you'd be in restraints. All your movement in the unit is unrestrained. And punitive seg, you could be restricted as 1 or 2 hours out of cell time for showers and rec. Here you have 7 hours out of cell time. And obviously we got TVs and inmates have radios, so there's other property pieces that an inmate would have in this unit that they would not have in Prudhoe Sec.
What are the consequences now if a visitor is caught smoking contraband in a weapon? And will those change under the new plan?
Probably not. If a visitor gets caught, they're arrested. That's actually a criminal act and prosecuted, and obviously barred from visiting any longer. So, yeah.
1 second. I wonder if you could update us on the investigation into the allegation that inmate Meatloaf was poisoned with rat poison and that they were denied medical care.
So we are conducting an investigation. As you know, it's possible litigation, so we can't comment on litigation, but we are looking into that allegation.
Wait, is that the last one? Go ahead.
If I can get another topic after.
Oh,
Sorry.
you don't get to pre-reserve here. This is not, we don't take reservations. Go ahead, just finish on this one, though.
The Horizon contract, there was a city council hearing about it. A lot of criticism, obviously. Can you talk about the contract?
I can talk broadly and say that it's being reviewed. We're keeping all our options open because obviously we're in the process of a major reform effort here, and we're trying to upgrade all elements of the work here. So we're going to take a hard look at that contract. Okay, let's go to off-topic. Off-topic, yes.
Seeing the DOI report in the state of the shelters, and do you have any plans or plans in place to fix some of the issues?
I cannot speak to the details of the report. I've gone through a summary of it, but I'll tell you we absolutely appreciate the report because it's pointing out some areas that we have to do better in, and we're going to move very aggressively to resolve violations in some of the places where we have people in shelter. So, from my point of view, what the report is giving us is a clear roadmap of some of the things that we have to address. There's tremendous commitment at Department of Homeless Services. In fact, a lot of the changes are already underway to get at those violations and to make sure that people who are in shelter are safe and healthy.
Mr. Mayor, the Commissioner Bill Bratton is testifying before the council today on the department's budget, preliminary budget. He said they're looking to increase their headcount. He's going to ask for more officers. You didn't put it in your budget. Have you had any talks? Are you totally opposed to the idea of increasing the headcount? Has there been any change there?
We've had good conversations. As you know, the Commissioner has been engaged in a re-engineering of the entire police department. That's been an ongoing conversation. There's been a series of presentations. There'll be more. We'll have a series of decisions that we're going to make as we get to our executive budget in late April, but no decisions have been made yet. We obviously know the Commissioner has an interest in some additional resources, and we're going to talk with him about it and come to a decision about what we think makes sense.
Are you still comfortable with the numbers of the NYPD headcount? Do you still disagree that it...
Again, that's why we have a budget process. I am very comfortable that the almost 35,000 officers we have are doing a great job right now, and that we are finding ways to make them more effective all the time. I think Commissioner Bratton and Chief O'Neill are constantly working at best deploying our officers and using the best strategies. That is ongoing work, and that's sort of quintessential to the ComStat concept. We're always trying to improve upon the work we do with the resources we have. We're going to make a decision on whether we believe there's a need for more resources based on a series of conversations with the Commissioner, but that's not been concluded yet.
Mayor, also related to the same hearing, a lot of the people there, or some of the people there, who are some of your biggest supporters, they're adamantly that they want to change the broken windows way of policing. You disagree with them, and these are some of your biggest supporters. Could you explain why you disagree with them?
Welcome to democracy, Dave. People I work with in the City Council and think very highly of, but we have a different view on this, and I will keep repeating it. Repetition does have a value in public life. The broken windows strategy brought us to the point of safety we have here in New York City today. It was broken windows combined with ComStat that took us from the early 90s, 2,000 plus murders a year, to where we are today. where they had the lowest number of murders last year we had had since 1963. So basically the lowest number of murders in my lifetime occurred last year in this city. I believe the broken windows theory and the notion of quality of life enforcement underlies good, responsive policing. Quality of life enforcement is based on complaints raised by citizens who call in and say, here's a problem, I want a police officer to address it. So it's actually police being responsive to demands by the citizenry, and that's what I believe in. It's being done in every neighborhood and every borough, so it's a fair and equitable approach. I think what some people then would say is, well, wait a minute, can't we make some adjustments to try and keep making it as fair and as balanced a system as it can be? And my answer is yes, which is why, with close collaboration between Commissioner Bratton and I and our teams, we came to the view that we should greatly reduce arrests for low-level possession of marijuana. And those arrests are down about 65% since the new policy went in place. That's a type of infraction that would squarely belong in the category of broken windows enforcement, and we decided to approach it differently, which has resulted in a very different reality in the relationship between police and community. I think it's been a great success. Equally, you could say, well, should there be new areas that you might approach things differently in as well? Yes, Vision Zero, where we're taking a more rigorous enforcement approach, and our officers are actually following up on some offenses that previously didn't get as much enforcement, and there's new laws on the books that they're implementing, particularly, for example, in the area of failure to yield to pedestrians. So I keep emphasizing the broken windows theory is ever-evolving approach. It needs to evolve. We need to keep working with communities to make it better. But the core strategy has worked.
Following up on Commissioner Bratton and his testimony, the Speaker of the City Council wants to decriminalize certain low-level crimes. Today in his testimony, Commissioner Bratton said that might not have enough bite. Your thoughts on that issue?
I haven't seen all of the Speaker's proposals. I want to be very clear about that. I believe, again, that the Commissioner's approach is the right one. So I don't know of a particular area that I would move for decriminalization on. I always would entertain the question, but I don't know of anything else I would right now be moving to decriminalize.
The McDonald's incident, did you see the video? What's your reaction?
I've heard about it, and it sounds atrocious, and my reaction is, I haven't seen it, my reaction is that those young ladies should be prosecuted. And I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe the video evidence may be sufficient for that. So it's horrendous that a young girl will be attacked in such a fashion by so many others, and they need to feel consequences.
Can you talk about why you asked for a DOI investigation into the homeless department? Did you suspect criminality there? I mean, why not just have the agency do an internal look?
Well, typically I don't initiate personally such a thing. DOI has a vision of its role, which I agree with 100%. In fact, we added resources to DOI in last year's budget so they could play an even more rigorous role in some agencies. DOI looks for problems in a way that is different than would be done by people who work for the same agency. I think there's lots of good watchdogs within agencies for sure, and there's lots of good people who are trying to solve problems, but an independent entity can do some things differently. And so DOI looks for areas where there's concerns, complaints are made, they see indications of any wrongdoing, and they swing into action. And what we have found is that oftentimes, as DOI formulates a vision for the kind of changes needed, our agencies are right there with them wanting to implement those changes as quickly as possible. Yes.
Can we get your thoughts on the shooting of 2 police officers today in Ferguson? Obviously, something the city's dealt with, both protests
Yes.
and the shooting of officers.
Well, it's painfully reminiscent of what we went through a few months ago. And I said earlier at the memorial in East Harlem, it was a despicable act. 2 officers who were standing guard at a peaceful demonstration. In principle, we thought it was a peaceful demonstration, and then in the midst of this horrible incident, thank God it appears the injuries are not life-threatening, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with them, and you know, hoping for a very speedy recovery. But it's horrendous that some individual brought violence into what was supposed to be a peaceful protest. Yes. Hey, let's let her have one more. Go ahead.
On the East Harlem explosion anniversary, there's now a bill in the council to require your office to map out the infrastructure of the city in order, which is obviously aging. Just wondering if you know anything about the bill, or if you would be willing to support it and have the city come up with such a...
Okay, I don't know the bill, so I can't comment on what it is seeking to achieve or how we'd approach it. I can say that as part of our 10-year capital plan, which will come out next month, we are going to address our infrastructure challenges head on. We're also obviously in the Plan NYC process going to talk a lot about the kind of infrastructure we need for the future. So we have vast infrastructure needs, but the city is going to, I can at least give you this preview, we're going to be putting a huge amount of resources into addressing those infrastructure needs over the next 10 years. So I think when we put out our two plans, 10-year capital plan and Plan NYC, it will provide a very clear roadmap of what infrastructure will be addressed and how and when, but I'm certainly happy to look at the council bill as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.